What's going on, Johnny Nation? Welcome to episode 202 of the Eye of the Storm podcast. My name is David Merrill, and listen, I'm not one for tooting my own horn, but towards the end of the last episode, I told you guys that there was a good chance the Johnnies are landing one mega big fish before this roster was all said and done, and they have done just that. As the May 27th deadline for players to pull out of the NBA draft and return to college struck midnight, Tounde Yessoufou made two decisions at the same time. First, he was foregoing being a late first round draft pick or early second round pick and going back to college. Second, he was taking his talents to St. John's. There was not going to be a song and dance recruitment. It was all business. Boom, I'm coming back to school and I'm going to be coached by Rick Pitino. This was the explosive addition everyone was waiting for. Everyone was asking for, and arguably the biggest addition of any high profile player of Rick Pitino's tenure, a surefire NBA player that said no to the NBA in favor of St. John's over Louisville, Kentucky, and UCLA. Take a second to realize what just happened. Take a second to realize where Rick Pitino and St. John's success over the last few seasons, and of course the NIL, has positioned the program. Beating out Blue Bloods for first round draft picks and the biggest names in the sport. Not bad. Before we get going, a quick shout out to Chris B and his 5-year-old son, CJ. You want to talk about parenting done right. Chris, who has one of the sickest St. John's memorabilia collections and card collections out there, has been taking his son to games for a while. And when they get into the car, CJ asks his dad to listen to the St. John's podcast, referring, of course, to the Eye on the Storm podcast. So big time shout out to Chris and CJ. Thank you so much for listening and supporting. All right. As New York is wrapped up in sports heaven with St. John's baseball, who has made it to their first super regional since 2012 and will play Alabama this coming Saturday, the story that's on everyone's mind in New York is the Knicks in the NBA Finals, who have a 1-0 lead on the Spurs thanks to a big 105-95 win on June 3rd. We say hello to Zach Braziller of the New York Post, who is on location in San Antonio covering the rematch of the 1999 Finals. Zach, St. John's was doing things a little bit differently this offseason. Last episode, Kevin Connolly of Storm the Paint and I discussed every piece in depth and how fans are possibly struggling to embrace this team due to some of the unknowns, mainly the Euros. But we kind of got past that and we made a pretty strong case for it. And sure enough, a week later, boom goes the dynamite. Come on down, Tounde Yessoufou from Baylor, right out of the NBA Combine, right out of the NBA Draft, and right to Queens to be the cherry on top for Rick Pitino's Year 4 team. Zach, let's ask the obvious question. How huge of an addition is this, and what does this mean for St. John's going into the season?
Yeah, I mean it's a game changer. Like it completely changes their offseason from, okay, to wow. Um he averaged almost 18 a game in arguably the best conference in the country as a freshman. Yes, didn't shoot great from three. Now part of that is Baylor had no point guard.
Yep.
Um, it's a huge, huge addition. I like there's no two ways about it. It makes them to me, a top 10 preseason team. He's a Big East Player of the Year candidate. He, you know, I can make an argument that I would rather have him than, Diop from who ended up going to Gonzaga, just because he fits the way they play so perfectly. He's a athletic freak. He's awesome in transition. He's just a ridiculous athlete. Um, he's he fits so well. When you throw him with Ian Jackson and Quinn Ellis, like you might have a top five backcourt in the country if Ellis is as good as advertised and Ian takes the step forward. This backcourt is awesome.
Yeah.
And then you pair it with some of the athletes they have, Babacar Sane, Freeman, Jackson, like they're probably going to be the most athletic team in the league.
Yep.
This talk that, when Rick did his Zoom about the new team, about we're probably not going to press. I
Yeah, no vibe.
find that hard to believe after this edition.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a huge addition. When Pitino had that Zoom, he had said, we'd like to add one more guy to make us a top 10 team, to make us a Final Four contender. And they were in on the, Milan. I'm not just
Mom,
going to try
Milan
his last name.
Momcilovic, let's go. Yeah.
Momcilovic. All right, good job, Dave. So they were in on him, but whenever I asked about it, it was like, yeah, we're recruiting him. We don't know how well he
Yeah.
fits. We'd love to get, I definitely had heard they really wanted Tounde. And then the day of the deadline, I asked, and they're like, yeah, look, we're in on both, but Tounde is our guy.
Yeah.
That's the one we want. Now the question was like, we don't know if we can get him to come out of the draft. And then I think it was about 11:15 p.m. The deadline is midnight. 11:15 p.m. I get a text saying, "Announcement's coming. He's pulling out of the draft and coming." And I'm like, so I text the source back. I'm like, "Wait, so he's committing to you guys at midnight?" And they're like, "That's what's supposed to happen."
Yeah.
I was like, "Okay." I wasn't gonna put it out yet because like I almost was like, this kind of seems hard to believe. I was like, I gotta actually see it to believe it.
Yeah.
Um,
So let's kind of just backtrack a little bit and kind of give everybody the timeline of this because I think a lot of people are asking the question of like kind of how did this happen? It's not necessarily that Tounde Yessoufou to St. John's came out of nowhere. I think that most people were surprised that Tounde Yessoufou did it all at the same exact time and that
right.
there was no recruitment and there was no visits and Milan Momcilovic said he wasn't going to visit anybody either. So I guess at that point you kind of know who your main contenders are. Obviously, the agents are dealing with a lot of big money situations. Lots of rumors of numbers of what it costs to land both of these guys. It's expensive. Do I believe the $6-7 million figure that's allegedly out there? I don't really buy that. I really don't buy a lot of the numbers that are out there this offseason, but that's a different conversation. The point is that this all stems from Tounde going through the NBA combine, having a good NBA combine from an athletic standpoint, but not a great NBA combine from a shooting standpoint. And that's what a lot of the feedback from NBA scouts and what I've talked to and everybody have said that they want him to refine his offensive game. And so what's he doing? And he said it. He wants to be a more of a finished product and have control of his future in the sense of where he is going. This is a loaded draft class. And so he was being talked about as a end of the first round pick, maybe early second round pick. And instead, what he's going to do is obviously work on that three. He was obviously working on it going into the NBA combine, similar to Zuby Ejiofor. Like these guys know what they have to work on to showcase themselves. But now he's going to have a full summer to continue that. He will have a full summer to get into Rick Pitino's system and really get developed with how Rick Pitino does it with individuals. But this timeline, like we heard about maybe 4 weeks prior to Tounde making his decision that there was interest there. But Zach,
Right.
you and I have spoke about this behind the scenes. We've spoken to our St. John sources that there was legitimate interest, but when you're dealing with high profile names like that, you know that St. John's is going to have formidable competition. And in this situation, they had to beat out Louisville, who has probably the most expensive roster in the country, Kentucky, who now with Milan Momcilovic has a very expensive roster, and UCLA, which had the hometown advantage allegedly, and relationships there as well. So again, this is another feather in the cap of St. John's and another situation where St. John's won a recruiting battle like this. And obviously NIL helps, but the Rick Pitino factor and the winning and going to the Sweet 16, like St. John's is a legitimate program now that is beating out Blue Bloods for the top recruits that are available. And it's absolutely incredible that this came to fruition, especially that quickly.
Yeah, I think one thing that we should not skip over in this is the combine.
Mhm.
He met Zuby Ejiofor, he met Dylan Mitchell, he met Bryce Hopkins, and like I talked to Tounde after his commitment. He said like, you could usually tell with guys out of college like, did they really enjoy their experience, and he could just tell how much those guys not only enjoyed playing at St. John's, but like their development.
Yeah.
Both and Bryce and Dylan were only there 1 year. Zuby's another thing. He's there 3 years, and I don't expect Tunde to be at St. John's for 3 years. So the fact that I think Bryce and Dylan probably weighed even like heavier than Zuby, because they were only there 1 year and they just
Yeah,
raved about their experience. And look, I think Dylan's getting drafted,
I do too.
and like I think in the 40s.
I do too. That's where he's
And I
trending up
think
to.
Rice is gonna, I don't think he'll get drafted, but he's gonna have a legit shot in
Yep.
summer league to get like a training camp invite. And like you see how bright, the knock on, Bryce coming to St. John's is like he's a guy who put up numbers but really wasn't a winning player. And by February, March, he absolutely was. I mean, he was awesome
Yep.
for this team late in the year. So I think that really helped. But yeah, I mean, like people see how much they won. They've seen how much excitement there is with this program, and it obviously helps. I think the draft really helped just because, like you mentioned, this is a loaded draft,
Yeah.
and Tounde is the kind of guy, if he has a really good year, like legit could be a borderline top 10
Yeah.
pick when you're looking at a weaker
If
draft. And
he
like
if he shoots if he shoots if he gets so he was a 29% 3-point shooter last season at Baylor as a freshman. Again, the one thing that you noted I
without
think
a
is very
without a point guard.
exactly that's what I was going to say. There was no real point guard on that team. He played next to Cam
Right.
Carr, who's going to get drafted this year as well. Two phenomenal players. Zach, you remember when we were down in Las Vegas, the conversation surrounding St. John's versus Baylor game was like, all right, you got to stop Tounde Yessoufou. And then actually Cameron Carr was the one that went off in that game. Tounde had an okay game, but Cameron
Right.
Carr was the one that really went off. St. John's obviously blew them out, but that was the conversation. So everybody knew about Yessoufou, and I think that because Baylor was pretty lousy last season, he's I want to say flying under the radar maybe a touch because this I think people realize how big of a deal St. John's landing him is, but it's almost like you're starting to see lists of best players to return to college, and like he's top 15, and that's like
Yeah.
a little crazy when like this kid, if he shot who shot 29% last year from three, if he gets up to like 34-35%, he's a lottery pick.
Yeah, I mean, look, he has an NBA body. He's got good size to be a NBA, 2-3. Yeah, it's a for the negative St. John's fan who was down on this offseason, it kind of
Yeah, I mean,
reminds you. Hey, look, if you look at this offseason, it's kind of goes in line with what every season has been, where they start slow. You have the negative fans saying, "Oh, the sky is falling, the season's over," and then they end up with 30 wins. We've
yeah.
seen it 2 years in a row.
Well, how about the recruiting? Remember year one and how
Right.
Rick got the slow start on
Slow.
the
Yep.
recruiting start, but then he finished it with that was Simeon Wilcher
Dingle
Jordan Dingle, right?
and
And then
Ledlum.
and Ledlum, right? Those are three like Ledlum
Right.
who decommitted from Tennessee in order to come to St.
Right.
John's, and then just huge additions as well. So like again, we kind of keep beating this drum, especially on this podcast. I keep telling everybody like Rick Pitino has earned benefit of the doubt every single year, and like the just there's some fans that just still cannot get over this notion that like if you didn't do it like Providence did this year, where they had like 8 commitments in 4 days, that like your roster was horrific and like there was no saving it, and yet you do what St. John's did. You land three really high end pros from Europe, and then you cap it off with Donnie Freeman and then Tounde Yessoufou, and you have the number four transfer slash portal class in the
Right.
entire country. So and then again, like on June 1st, Jeff Borzello puts out his way too early top 25 and he moves St. John's from 26th to 7th. Like that's how big of a Tounde Yessoufou ad is if you want to quantify it. And you said you think they're a top 10, top 12 team
Yeah,
preseason.
right around there.
I think they're like in that 8 to 13 range, probably, which is not top five or one like they were last year. And but I think it maybe alleviates some of that pressure. But like this is such a huge move. And the other thing that I think we need to talk about is like the fit. Because everybody was like, "Oh, like, go get Milan. He's the best one." But like, Tunde was the first priority for St. John's.
Are we going
Uh,
to talk about the St. John's tax?
well, we can certainly talk about that for the people that don't know about that. And this is another inside joke. And me and Kevin talked about some inside jokes with Lefty, but uh, the St. John's tax of the 3-point shooters coming to Queens and somehow not shooting as well, to put it lightly. And so Milan, who shot almost 49% from three last year, would the joke running is that he would come to St. John's and shoot like 31%. But uh, we digress. But
I would have loved to write stories about asking Rick why can't he make threes anymore? But What are you gonna
God,
do?
and
That would have been fun. That
all
would
the
have been
players
fun.
that shot threes better
But
on
no,
the
I
road than
just
home.
I just
But let's
like
yeah,
this. He
Zach, let's just the
fits.
fit,
He
yeah, the
fits.
fit
Yeah.
of like just if you look at the style that St. John's and Rick Pitino wants to play, they run, they play really fast, they want to be in transition, and now like Tounde, that's what he does best. If you look at how he scores the best in college, it's at the rim. If you compare the scoring around the rim, Zuby Ejiofor was 65.6% last year. Dylan Mitchell was 65.7%. Bryce Hopkins was 56.8%. Tounde Yessoufou, as a freshman, was 68.5% around the rim, which was second amongst all Big 12 guards. Again, you mentioned how tough
Who was
that
number
league
one?
is. I have to look that up. I'm not sure. I
Yeah.
wouldn't be. I'm not. I'm not exactly sure. I should have had that. I'm sorry. But
That's a fact. I mean, my initial thought would be AJ
that's
Demonsa,
me
but
too. That's probably where my brain was going first. But again, like the fit here is simply better than Milan Momcilovic. And like Momcilovic is a great shooter, but like that's it. And like I don't want to like this is a first world problem situation. You could have had Milan or you could have had Tunde. Like you take anyone and be thrilled. But like if you're trying to fit it, especially with this roster of Ian moving back to hit the two, Donnie Freeman staying at the four, not having to worry about, a Milan situation of where you're gonna play guys. Ruben Prey gets to stay at the five. It's a better fit, and he's just a better player in the system.
yeah, and look, they have the chance to be just an absurd transition team
Mhm.
between him, Babacar Sane, Ian Jackson,
Quinn
Quinn
Ellis.
Ellis. I
Yep.
mean, they have they
And
look, we
Donnie's really good in transition too. He could run the floor.
they've had some very athletic teams. I think on paper at least this has a chance to be their most athletic
I
with
agree.
Pitino. And like it's a I mean good luck good luck slowing. I mean Babacar Sane is a tank.
Hmm.
Like he's a guy you could play small ball five, you could go big and play him at the three. Um yeah, look, I the only question I think I have anyone will really have with this roster is the front court depth.
Yes.
Ruben Prey um has only really played limited minutes. I think he'll be fine there, but it's a question mark. You do have Prey 6'11, you have Donnie Freeman who's 6'10, you have Babacar Sane who's 6'8. You have the two freshman 7-footers. Um, I think you're going to see at least early in the year, you'll see a lot of Sane and Freeman as small ball fives, and that's another reason why I think this was a huge ad because it gives you versatility where like you could go really big and you could play Tunde at the two, or you could go small and you could even play him as like a small ball four. He's that good of an athlete, and that's the other thing. Like if you look at his numbers last year, yeah, he scored, but he rebounded. He
Yeah.
he had averaged 2 steals a game, 1.6
Yeah.
assists. Like he's the kind of complete like how often do we hear from Petito about the guards last year is like they don't do enough stuff besides score. They
Zach,
don't do it there.
he scored 17.8 points per game, 5.9 rebounds per game, and 2 steals per game last season at Baylor. The only other freshman to reach these marks in the last 20 years, LSU's Ben Simmons and Duke's Zion Williamson.
No, he's
That's
look. It,
elite college basketball company.
I mean, I think in most normal years he's gone to the NBA.
Yeah,
I think I it, it the money obviously helps. There's
sure.
no doubt. He's getting paid. It's you know during the whole like when I knew they're involved, I was like everyone. That's I think the thing that why this makes this so big is most people thought he was going to the NBA.
Mhm.
That's what when he entered the portal the last day just as like a safety valve. And his agent said, he's going to the NBA. He at the combine, he said, "My focus on the NBA." So like, I think what makes it so big is like you could argue like, yeah, Kadari Richmond was huge, but everyone knew the St. John's was getting Kadari Richmond.
Yep.
Um, Other ones were Bryce Hopkins, but everyone kind of knew St. John's was
Yeah.
getting Bryce Hopkins. What makes Tunde so big is like it was thought of as a long shot that he was coming back to college, and a lot of people thought he was going to UCLA.
Well,
Uh,
all those lists of like, for the last like 2 weeks leading up to the NBA draft deadline to pull out, it was always like, oh, what's the percentage of this guy coming in and coming out? And, Tunde was 50-50 kind of like on everyone's list. And like Milan,
I think it
most
was
people,
even more. I think it was even like I think a lot of
yeah.
people thought it was like 30-70.
Yeah,
And he was
yeah, that's fair. I think, but I think it was closer to 50-50 than like everybody who talked about like Milan.
right.
Like Milan was like coming back, right? Like, and everybody was like, yeah, he's coming back and he's probably going to end up at Kentucky, which is what ended up happening. Like, this is such a huge win. And I think it speaks to a lot of things. I mean, one, the kid and his agent obviously read the situation and are making a obviously basketball decision and a financial decision. But like, this is the benefit of the NIL for the college basketball world. And this is what we talk about. It's like, yes, money is getting obscene and year over year is getting bigger, but it's keeping talent in the game. So like, yeah, Milan Momcilovic is probably a second round pick in most years. Tounde is either a late first round or an early second round pick. It's
I've
like both guys are going to be
with all the
in
guys
the squad.
leaving, I have a hard time seeing Toonday not have. I think he would have been like 26 to 28. Like so
Yeah,
many of these. Think about all the guys who were late first who have decided to come back. Like I think he would have been a late first, but
mhm.
like you give St. John's a lot. I mean, they handled this recruitment really well. They stealthily
And
were on
quietly,
him.
right?
They were stealth about it, and they also were like they were aggressive, but not too like over.
Yeah,
They respected the fact that the kid was focused on the draft, but they made it clear like we want him bad.
yeah.
He's the guy we want.
And
We
you spoke to his agent about it, right? And
yeah,
you spoke to him, and you put out an article about saying that and the agent basically agreed. He's like, listen, they made it really well known that Tunde is their focus.
right. And so they really wanted him, and but they respected the process and like that he was focused on the draft, and they did a great job of being clear and being strong, being like, look, we're gonna do whatever it takes to get him, if he has any interest in coming back to school. And like in the end, he thought he's taking a risk. Let's not
Sure,
like this is a risk because yes, he would technically make more money in college, whatever. Like let's say he's probably somewhere 5 to 6
right.
range. So he would make more money in 1 year than necessarily if he was picked 27th. But when you get picked 27th, you get like a 4 year deal.
Yeah, and
So
it's
he is
guaranteed.
right. So it is risky, but it's a smart risk because if he has the year he thinks he can have, he's going to make a lot more
So
money in
let's
a
talk
year.
about that kind of what year he could possibly have. We're talking about a guy, and this is the scary part. I think a good scary is, and why I think it's such a great decision by him. Averaged 18 points per game and 8 rebounds per game, basically in the Big 12. And the addition becomes so tantalizing is that it's a guy who is an NBA draft pick coming back to school who can actually improve on those numbers because of Rick Pitino's player development sessions, because he's actually going to have a point guard to play with, because Ian Jackson is going to be at the two. The backcourt is going to take some of that pressure off of him because he did turn the ball over a good amount at Baylor last year, but it's because he had the ball so much and it was him and Cam Carr, and they didn't have anybody else to kind of do anything. You look at other things that he was struggling with or had issues with. Those 2 steals a game is great, but there are times that he was overly aggressive on defense and trying to, he made some mistakes and got out of position defensively, but he's hyper aggressive defensively. He has the size, he has the length of 6'10", being with a wingspan at 6'6". He is the perfect weapon at St. John's who can potentially be better than 18 points per game and 8 rebounds. Now, I don't know if he necessarily hits those marks, but he could. But man, it gives St. John's another guy who can go get it, go get a basket. And Zach, we've both covered this team and watched every second for many years. How many times has St. John's lacked the guy who can just go get you a basket? And like Ian Jackson, we thought should have been more of that guy last year. He's up and down. I think now going into the two, he becomes I think more comfortable that he could be a little bit more aggressive and get you that bucket. You got Baba Carsane who could probably go and get you a bucket to the rim anytime. Quinn Ellis is going to be setting those guys up, but he can go get you a bucket. Donnie Freeman can go get you a bucket. There are so many now options for this roster, and Tunde is just such a weapon. I think that is going to be. I think you're going to talk about probably Silas Demery, and you're going to talk about Tunde and maybe Braylon Mullins
Yeah,
about for Big East Player of the Year preseason.
yeah. I would think those are the three guys. It'll be interesting to see if Villanova can close on the big 7 footer from Italy.
Luigi
Um,
Swigo, Song Swingo, something like that. I don't
yeah,
kind
I
yeah.
think if they get him, you would probably put them at number three.
Over
Um,
Providence, you think so?
Probably. I mean, if he's as good as projected, yeah. I
I
Look.
really
I
like
like
what
what
Providence did.
Providence did in the backcourt. I don't like their front court at all.
Sure, but they're really loaded in the front
Yeah.
and
Look.
adding Dink Pate, man.
Yeah.
Zach, I
Look.
remember when St. John's was rumored. I don't even know if that's public. Is that public?
They were rumored to be
Yeah,
interested.
St.
Whenever I
John's was
asked
rumored.
about them, I wasn't
Yeah,
really. I never really
there
heard they
was
were
alleged
involved.
there. Let's preface that. There's allegedly rumors. St. John's was early on interested in Dink Pate. Then it completely quieted down. It was like all he did was talk about Kentucky or
Right. Everyone thought he was
allegedly.
going to Kentucky, and then
Right. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Providence
yeah.
just strikes with Brian
No, look,
Hodgson.
I like Providence. Like I think the league has got a legit shot for 5 to 6 bids. I
Yeah.
think Providence had a really good offseason. Xavier had to me a very underrated offseason. I really like Marquette brings back its three really good young players led by the point guard. And they went out and they got a few good, actually hit the portal finally
Yep. Yep.
and went out and get a few good players. So I think those are those to me that's the top six. But yeah, look, I think the league is very much improved. I still think it's clearly St. John's, UConn, St. John's at the top, and I think there's a pretty far margin after the top two. But I like Villanova, I like Providence, I like Marquette, you know, like Xavier. So yeah, I mean, I think is the league definitely had a much better offseason than it's had in the past. Now it's got to you want to see results,
Yep.
but yeah, I think
And the Big East needs a commissioner.
yeah, some interesting names.
Yeah.
I mean, Dan Gavin would be
Yeah.
just so intriguing.
So and obviously poetic with
Yeah,
the history there. Zach, let's. I've thought about this a lot and why, especially the fit, and we've talked about this a lot. And Tounde as such a fit, I think also because the qualities and tendency that he has is make him a perfect Rick Pitino weapon. Relentless energy is something that he always plays with. He crashes the glass. He looks for putbacks. He generates extra possessions due to his effort levels and physicality. Doesn't that sound to you just like Zuby and Dylan? Like he's just such
yeah,
a perfect fit. And again, I think all of that just goes back to it. We talk about, and you talked about it at the combine. He got to talk to these guys, and like th- you can just. It's easy to sell the guy on the fit. Again, money helps. Like nobody's going to sit here and
of
pretend
course.
that that wasn't a factor. But like and he put out a lengthy statement, I believe, a day or two afterwards on
Yeah,
social
there was kind
media.
of a response to an article that came out of California, I think.
hmm And then, again, he wanted to make it clear that he wasn't picking it for the money and he wanted to, again, control his future and he wanted to get
Right.
better and he wanted to be coached and it wasn't about the money. And listen, the skeptic in you obviously wants to say, yeah, right. Like he wouldn't have gone to St. John's or anywhere for free in this era. But like, I think if you read and Zach, you shared the story, I shared the story. There's a really good profile that was written by Mark Spears about Tounde, and this is a kid that started playing basketball at 9 years old from a small country, and started watching Kobe Bryant and basically fell in love with the game, and then comes to America and blossomed into this 5-star absolute like insane basketball player. So he's not like a kid that comes from any kind of means or anything, but he's somebody that's realized his talents and he saw the winning and he talked to players and he made the best kind of fit, man. I just think that he seems like a really good kid with a really good head on his shoulders. You got to talk to him. I mean, what kind of kid did you like? Do you think that St. John's is getting with Tunde?
Yeah, he's very mature. That Spears story was really good. He Tunde is already, he built a basketball court back home.
Yep.
Donated like supplies back home. He definitely comes off as very mature. And he was telling me like, look, I play from a physicality standpoint in the NBA next year? Yeah, he was like probably, but when I get to the NBA, like I want to make sure I'm completely ready. Like
hmm
I want to make sure I'm there to stay. And it was very look. You obviously always have to factor in the money.
Yeah.
Not we can't ignore that, but it's a very mature, um, way to go about things. And I mean, like Rick Pitino, I mean, said he has the work ethic of Zuby and like the temperament of Sadiku Ayo.
Uh,
It doesn't get any more uh
yeah.
positive than that
You might
if
as well
the
hang
Rick
his
Pitino.
banner, hang the jersey up now. I mean, it's like two of Rick Pitino's favorite sons. It speaks a lot to the character of the kid, and again, like the basketball thing trumps everything, but when you're getting kids that you can root for as well, it doesn't hurt. I mean, and especially you're talking about building the St. John's brand. We're a few weeks away from possibly having two St. John's players drafted in the same draft in Zuby Ejiofor and Dylan Mitchell, which would be humongous. Hopefully Bryce Hopkins is playing. We're watching Julian Champagny in the NBA Finals. Danish Jenkins was just playing an amazing season for the Detroit Pistons. So the St. John's brand is obviously huge, and Tounde Yessoufou is potentially, and I mean, probably 100% another player that's in the NBA that's going to get announced as, from St. John's University. That stuff matters. I mean, it's huge for the brand. I mean, Zach, look, his freshman season at Baylor set the freshman single season record for points scored, field goals made, field goals attempted, finished with 67 steals, which was the second most ever by a Baylor freshman, only behind some kid named VJ Edgecombe, who's pretty decent this year and for the
He's not bad.
Philadelphia
Not bad.
76ers. And he had 12 games where he scored over 20 points. Uh, this this is quite a ad, obviously. And Zach, he told you that it was a no brainer to pull out of the NBA draft and go to St. John's. Yeah, why do you think that is?
Yeah, I think when he pulled out of the draft, he was seemed pretty set on St. John's. He didn't do any, he pulled out of the draft and he committed. I think there's some, there he has a lot of faith in Rick Pitino. They clearly hit it off. He mentioned one of his mentors is Derek Anderson, the former Kentucky star, and I mean, Kentucky fans, I'm sure don't love to hear this, but like Derek Anderson really talked up his experience playing for Rick Pitino.
Yeah,
And, he heard similar stuff from Zuby and Dylan Mitchell and Hopkins. And like, he told me is like, I like to hear how hard he is on guys. He's like, I want to be pushed. I want the coach to kick me in the ass. Like that's, and we all know that's what Rick Pitino is going to do. So I think that really, Derek Anderson obviously helped. All this stuff helped, and look, it's New York. I think that now that St. John's brand has kind of come back, like there is a draw, especially like kids who aren't even from here to New York to the Garden. They're gonna
yeah.
play. I mean, they're gonna play at I guess 14 or 15 or 16 games at the Garden next year. They're gonna be
They're
there all
gonna
the time.
play at a place where the NBA finals are taking
Right.
place, man. All this stuff matters now for the brand.
Right. They're gonna play a ton against the Garden. The non-conference schedule is very good. Like he's gonna have a million opportunities in front of NBA people to show them what he can do. And he's gonna be playing for a team that's probably gonna be preseason top 10. Um, and I do think the Milan
Momcilovic.
Monchelovich stuff helps St. John's. Kind of like the Robert Wright helped St. John's, where you had BYU trying to get him, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, they got him, and BYU and Kentucky fighting over him. And while they were fighting over him, St. John's was closing on Quinn Ellis.
Right.
And I think in this situation, while Kentucky and Louisville are fighting over Monchilovich, St. John's is all in on
Yeah.
Toonday. Like in both of these circumstances, I think helped is these other schools are fighting over someone, and there's kind of whispers, oh, St. John's recruiting the kid, but in reality, they're not. In reality, they were all in on someone else. And whether it's Ellis or Tunde, they won. And you look, I'm not going to say this was a perfect offseason. There are obviously misses and there are obviously, things they could have done differently. But in both of these circumstances, they obviously played their cards right.
Yeah. And again, if you look at those quote unquote misses, right? They're if you speak to the fans, they would think there's a lot of them. But in reality, like Masamba Jop is obviously the biggest one, and Rick Pitino spoke about it, and there was a relationship with the agent there that was too difficult to, I guess, overcome, according to stories. Uh, so besides that, like Mustafa Cham visited St. John's, had a workout, and ended up going to Michigan, like the national champs. Like, how do you? It's not a miss, and if you, whoever you talk to, I mean, it sounds like that was the plan all along potentially. Guys like Leroy Blyden, who he worked out for St. John's at a time where they needed backcourt help, ends up going to Kansas. You're sitting there like, I don't know what St. John's going to do with the backcourt. But, shortly thereafter, Lefty comes back. Then they
Right.
add Avery Brown. They add Kyle Cuff Jr. And you got to remember, I think something that people are forgetting is like Ian Jackson moving to the two, but he's got now a little bit of seasoning playing the point. So, like, you could run a few minutes of Ian Jackson technically at the point guard, and then let's say you move Tounde to the two, and you play Babacar at the three, and then Freeman at the four, and Prey at the five. You can get a lot of different looks now and that versatility because of Ian and him coming back. And Zach, we haven't gotten to talk about this. Either, but like just quickly, I mean, your thoughts on Ian coming back and making the, I think, really mature decision to kind of buck the trend of hitting the portal and going to maybe the highest bidder. Obviously, the benefits of what a year two in the Rick Pitino system can do for him, obviously as a player and for his future.
Yeah, like I think Ian's a really easy guy to root for. Um, he the way he handled this year, which clearly didn't go according to plan, personally, was really impressive. Um, he easily could have went elsewhere, no question about it. There were people pushing
Yep.
to go elsewhere, and he, as soon as the year went, when it was over, he made it clear to the staff that he wanted to be back and that he wanted to make it work here. And I think it was a smart decision. Like, think about it. If you go back to high school, his last year of high school, he went to Our Savior
Lutheran. Yep.
Lutheran. So you have Hayes for 1 year, Lutheran for 1 year, Carolina for 1 year, St. John's for 1 year. That's four schools, four coaches in 4 seasons. He transfers again, that's 5-5. That's not a recipe for
No.
success. And I think he was smart enough to know that. I think he also loved the idea of playing for his hometown team. And, like, let's not forget, they would have beat Kansas without him. He had a big role in that win. And he had some really good moments, that he
Yep.
was inconsistent. There's no question about it. But, he was playing out of position. And, Rick Pitino is repeatedly, he said it 2 or 3 times all season, just like Ian has really impressed him with his maturity, with his accountability, with his leadership. And yeah, like let's not forget, there was a player with Masamba Jop at the Garden working out and trying to help bring him in.
Yep.
And while he didn't come in, Ian Jackson was that player.
Yeah.
And Ian Jackson was trying to do whatever it took to help this program. And that stuff matters. Like, it didn't work out. The kid didn't come here, but like Ian did what he could to get to help this program. And like, you just hope the kid has a really good year and the program has a good year because like he deserves it. Because
Yeah.
the easy way out would have been to transfer.
I agree. And that's something that me and Kevin kind of talked about. It's like it's impossible to replace Zuby Ejiofor and the way that the fans kind of fell in love with him. But Ruben Prey being here for year three and now getting a huge role potentially, well, not potentially, he will have a huge role.
Right.
And Ian Jackson coming back as the hometown kid for year two, very publicly making a conscious decision to not transfer and come back to St. John's. Like, you talk about easy kid to root for, but I think the fan base is who is going to be looking for guys to become attached to. I think the Ian Jackson is. I think you're going to see a lot of 11 jerseys in the stands with kids. I think, and I can't speak highly enough of how mature of a decision it is, and especially in today's landscape. And it's a way to win a lot of brownie points with this fan base. After a year that, like you said, was pretty consistent. We saw flashes, but it wasn't what was we all thought we were getting with Ian Jackson.
Yeah,
Um,
I will also say this about if Tunde Yessoufou scores 25 in his first game, he's going to win over plenty
I
of
mean, of course, yeah. Listen, I think you got a lot of really talented guys on this team. Theo Edema is somebody who I've gotten to speak to a little bit. Kid sounds like he's going to be a fan favorite as well. Just, I mean, this kid says, "I want to be the next Zuby Ejiofor." Like he's like,
Yeah,
I've
well,
seen everything. I've seen everything that Zuby is, a guy that, is from the same place and plays the same position, and he wants that hustle, hard work, and start with defense, man. Like decent place to start by saying you just what you want to you're coming to St. John's to be the next Zuby Ejiofor. Hey, sign me up, man.
so is
You
this the
you
new
can get
normal?
a jersey back there one day, hopefully.
Is this the new normal where like St. John's going to basically be a preseason top 10 team every year?
It's weird. It's weird, man. I don't know,
It
man.
is very weird, man. It's usually
I,
like before Patino, you go into, you're like, well, if this goes right
right.
and that goes right, maybe they'll be on the bubble.
Yeah, listen, Zach, we are not far removed from trying to figure out ways that they could somehow squeak to 10-10 in the Big East, or 12
Right,
and 8, and try to, scratch to be a 10 or 9 seed. And,
right.
we're talking about quote unquote bad years as a 5 seed in the NCAA tournament and going to the Sweet 16. Times have certainly changed in
I'd say
Queens.
so. I'd say
Um,
so.
all right, Zach, we're going to do this again later on in the summer once we kind of get closer to the schedule finalizing. Let's leave it here. You can't pick Toonday, you can't pick Quinn Ellis, and you can't pick, let's say you can't pick the back card. So you can't pick
Okay.
Ian, can't pick Toonday, you can't pick Ellis. Give me the guy who you're most excited to watch this season right now.
Babacar Sane. I mean, his highlights ridiculous.
Yeah.
He, like I mentioned, he's a tank, and I know someone, he was a G League Ignite guy. That was the
Yes.
old G League program which brought in top prospects, and I know someone who coached there, a longtime NBA scout who basically told me like he if he had made one or two decisions differently, he'd be in the NBA right now. He's a physical. He has an NBA. He has NBA athleticism. He has NBA physicality. I mean, I think he's going to be awesome. He's going to
Yeah.
be, to me, I think he's basically, I don't think he'll start, but he'll basically be like a six starter.
Mhm.
I'm just fascinated to see he can shoot. Not a great shooter, but he can make threes. He can play a small ball five. He can be a bruising three. Um, I think he's going to be awesome. For everything heard from about him, everything I've seen, he's he's tough. He's physical. Um, he's going to be a handful. I
Yeah.
That's the guy besides Ellis who, because to me it's Ellis and Sonny are the most interesting because like
Mhm.
all we've done is see film on them. We haven't actually watched them play. So those are the guys I'm most fascinated with. But so if I can't go Ellis, I'll go Sonny. I'm
Okay.
just really interested in
And I
watching
mean,
play.
obviously Ellis is so intriguing. It's like the first real like
Sure.
floor general that St. John's has had under Rick Pitino. Like, I guess you can kind of put Danis in that role, but
I
like,
mean, you could put Kadari in there, even though he was
yeah, just a little different. Like this is like a true point guard. I think
there.
Qatari was more like a combo, and Danis was also kind of a combo. I think Danis had a lot on his shoulders when he
Right.
was here. Quinn has so much talent around him, as well as being like a cerebral floor general. I think it's just so interesting to see how that's going to work. And like the other thing that Rick told us in that Zoom is like, you add these Euro guys who are familiar with the Euro style, and that's the offense that he wants to play, and he's implemented.
Right.
So perhaps the learning curve is not going to be as steep with, professional basketball players who know the system and style already. That's wishful thinking. There's going to be some bumps along the way. Hey guys, St. John's is not going to go like 38-0. Let's kind of get that out the way. And if they lose a game or two in Las Vegas, like, can we not jump off of a cliff
Oh,
and like,
they're building
please?
cliffs. Cliffs will be jumped off. Are you new? If they if they the first loss on this team is not
uh,
good, we might go to Dayton
yeah,
if we're
yeah,
lucky.
yeah,
I mean, let's not let's look.
yeah,
It was an awesome close to the off season
for
between
sure.
Sane and Tunde, but
Yes.
let's not have amnesia.
Uh,
You're gonna have the people in this fan base, and we know who they are.
yes.
The first sign of trouble, the first loss. This team isn't good. Why did we go to Europe?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
I mean, and then when they win the Big East again and they win 30 games, all of a sudden all that talk is just forgotten.
Right, right.
You know.
All right, Zach, let's go rapid fire. Just some questions from the fans. A lot of Ruben Prey questions. Obviously, Ruben is going to be asked to be the five man this year. He's going to start at the five. Rick Pitino has said that he's basically paid his dues and that, he's kind of earned this. Obviously, that's changed throughout the offseason because, like, if they landed him a Samba Jop, like, obviously, Prey probably would be a sixth man, kind of a big coming off the rope, something like that. Or maybe he would be the four and there would be no Donnie Freeman. Who knows? But that's the expectation that I want, and I want to be really clear about this. Like, right now, fans need to remember and realize for the rest of the season that Ruben Prey is not Zuby Ejiofor. Do not expect him to do what Zuby did last year. That is unfair to Ruben. Is just, and it's like this fan base is psychotic and has plenty of like mental issues. But
Psychotic.
like,
You're being kind.
thank you. So it's late on on June 4th here, but that like don't expect Ruben Prey to be Zuby, but Ruben Prey has a lot to offer. I think he's going to be very interesting in this roster build. I personally think, and this is a kind of like a flag I'm planting, I think Ruben Prey is the X factor to this season. I think if you get Ruben Prey to be like an 8 to 10 point per game guy and like a 6 to 8 rebound per game guy, he becomes so valuable to this team at the five, and obviously has to stay out of foul trouble. I just think that he can really unlock the full balance of this team, and I think it's very like realistic expectation for a year three Ruben Prey. I'm just curious what you think, and the fans are asking like what you or your expectations of a Ruben Prey is now that he's going to be put into this role.
You know, it's why I think some of these additions were so important. It lessens the pressure on Ruben
Hmm.
to where like you go the year and you're just like Ruben, rebound, defend, hit a three here and there, but do what you do well. Like you don't Ruben Prey does not have to average 13 points and nine
Yeah.
rebounds. He could like they have plenty of scoring. They have plenty of firepower. Like just do what you've done. Just it's got to be you're going to be on the court more. But
And
just
we saw him hit those 4 threes against Duke
right.
in the Sweet 16. So like he's gonna be able to keep all defenses honest, and I think that that's huge for St. John's. And again in the
Well,
versatility
that's
of
the
the offense.
thing with you look at they have a Tounde, you have a Sana, you have a Freeman. These are guys who, are going to play in the paint, and now you have a center who can make threes,
Yeah,
and he doesn't have to. He's going to be a pick and pop guy. He can.
and Ruben's no slouch on defense. Let's remember that. Like,
No, I mean, that's why I think these additions were so big. Is like you go in this year and you're just telling Ruben, just do what you've done. You're just going to be on the court doing it more. Like you just rebound, just defend, make shot. When the ball comes to you, don't be afraid, shoot the ball. But like you're not going to the year saying, well, we need Ruben Prey to take a Zuby jump. It's not fair to ask him to do that. Like Zuby is unique. Like what Zuby did from his sophomore and junior year is not normal. And like you can't put it on Ruben to say, well, we need to do that. And here's the thing, they don't need him to do that.
yeah,
They don't need him to be Zuby. They need him to be Ruben Prey. But he's just gonna be on the court more.
yeah,
Like they need him to just rebound, to block shots, to defend, and like they have more than enough foul. Like if Ruben Prey gives you, let's say, like 6.7 rebounds a game, that's probably gonna be enough.
yeah. I agree.
You don't need him to score a ton. Like this worry, like, oh, is Ruben ready? Like he's not.
Yeah, I
You don't
think.
need him to put up Zuby numbers.
Yeah, exactly.
He's got. That's the thing. He's got more talent around him than Zuby had.
Hmm.
Like
Yeah.
last year.
Okay, so that leads me to one of the other fan questions, and we'll wrap it up here because there's two more. First, let me just say, there's a lot of people that have been asking Zach and I about this 15th roster spot. Uh, they're going to add somebody. I know Rick Pitino said that he was going to be 24 hours later. There was we got word of a name potentially they're adding. Now things are up in the air. Now they're potentially looking at somebody else. Guys, it's not going to be any major name. Stop like going
Wait,
nuts
so is
about the 15.
LeBron not coming back to college to be the
He
15th
does
man?
have eligibility, Zach. I think, technically he's got
Uh,
4 years of eligibility. So
okay.
I think we can get like a 45-year-old LeBron to St. John's.
Well, Jalen Brunson only played 3 years in college, so
Sign him up. Sign him up.
he likes the garden. All right.
He does like again, the 15th roster spot, just like guys, it's not that serious. You already have this team is going to play about 10, 11 deep already. Like it's just stop freaking out about it. What I will ask you though is an interesting question. Is this roster right now, and obviously we haven't seen them play together yet, but like on paper, is this a more talented roster than last year?
It's a it's a tough question because like at this time last year we thought Joe Sansanin was going to be 15 a game, and
And
Ian
Ozai was
Jackson
going to shoot
first year.
45% from
Right.
three.
And
Yeah.
like, so it's a really hard question, like, because we got to see the European guys here. But knowing what I know about how last year's team wound up, I think it's a more talented roster.
Okay.
Yes, you're not as good up front. There's no doubt you're not as good up front, but like, people forget Donnie Freeman's like,
Yeah.
is a guy who people think could be a first round pick.
McDonald's
He
All American
just needs to be kind of coached.
and
Donnie
stay
Freeman,
healthy. Has to stay healthy, obviously.
well, health obviously too. Donnie Freeman reminds me of Bryce Hopkins. Like
Mm.
Bright kind of comes in with the knuckle, very talented guy, but isn't necessarily a winning player. Um, you know, he's honestly more
Zach,
talented than
you
Bryce.
and I both know a lot of people that got some Syracuse ties, and we've talked to people about like that wasn't a great situation for Donnie Freeman in Syracuse.
Yeah, I have a buddy who's a huge Syracuse fan, and when Donnie Freeman left, when St. John's was like, I'm glad he left, but he's going to be awesome at St. John's. like he wasn't going to work here, but with Pitino, he'll be great.
Yeah.
Um, I actually think he's more like because he's bigger than Bryce Hopkins.
Mhm.
I actually think he's more talented than Hopkins. Um, you know, I they're they're really talented. Like they're really talented. Like, but now it's tricky because we got to see these guys play together. We got to
Yep.
see what the
Yep.
Europeans do in college. Um, but yeah, on paper, I think an argument could be made it's the most talented team that had. The
Yeah.
second year team, as much as people love that team and as good as that team was, it really couldn't shoot. This team
Hmm.
projects to have better shooting.
All right.
This
So Zach,
team,
top 10 preseason, you're saying?
yes,
Okay.
I'll go. Yeah, I think somewhere from 8 to 12, but I'll go top 10. Yes.
Okay. All right. I think I'm with you. I'll get again, let's let's say nine. How about that?
Yeah.
Nine, nine, eight, nine, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, look, no, we all know it doesn't matter. But yeah,
Listen,
I think
you know what? Yeah, it doesn't matter, but it does matter. Like again, we, Zach, we are not far from many 14 and 16 seasons, and
sure.
like not even sniffing this, and now they are consistently in the top 10. Like the new normal. That's what we talked about, right? Back pages, like
Yeah.
it's become fun to be a St. John's fan. It's been fun to cover St. John's. They
Well,
are
let
nationally
let me say
relevant.
this. I didn't have much fun this spring.
Well, it was
Let's just say this. The portal
the fan
this
base drove you a
spring.
little crazy.
I mean,
The post plus
this
texts.
this spring was a little rough, man.
Yeah. By the way, sign up for Post Plus and get all of Zach's
I
stories and
appreciate
alerts.
that. The checks in the
It's
mail.
it's
It
it's
was.
only it's only $5, guys.
Let's just say this was this was because it was slow and you had people freaking out. I mean, look, they freak out every spring. We
Of
all know
course,
that. But yeah, this
mentally
was.
unstable fan base.
I mean, think about it. There was like, what was it, like 2 full weeks from the Patino press conference after they announced Sane and Quinn Ellis and all that until the draft. I think it was even more. I think it was like,
Yeah, I think it was more than 2 weeks.
yeah, it was like 15, 16 days. Every day it was like, we're not getting
Yeah,
Monchovic. 2 days going to the pros. The sky's falling. There was this mystery third guy that no one knew about,
yeah,
and that doesn't really exist. And it was, yeah,
yeah.
it was all I'm gonna say, thank God for this because I can at least use it as an excuse to
All
shield
right, so
myself from some
that's
of the crazy.
exactly that's where we're ending on it. Just get 30 seconds on the game on a Wednesday. Zach is again in San Antonio covering the New York Knicks for the New York Post. The Knicks absolutely getting a humongous game one win in the NBA Finals against the San Antonio Spurs, getting a 10-point win. Jalen Brunson with an unreal fourth quarter. Just what's it like? I think this is your first NBA Finals you're covering,
It
right?
is. Yeah, it
Uh,
was. It was a madhouse. Very good, decent amount of Nick fans. Madhouse. I was early third quarter, down 14. I'm like, I still thought they would win the series. They lost the game, but I did not think they were winning that game. Maybe they're not going to lose again. I. It's in this postseason because look, I don't follow the NBA like a diehard during the regular season. The NBA regular season is
awful,
tough.
Awful
Yeah, it's
product.
bad. It's a bad product.
Yeah.
And it's this playoffs is just an example of why anyone who like lives and dies the regular season should have their head checked because it means absolutely nothing. The Knicks were a they won games because they had a lot of talent, but they were average good team. And now after 2-1 down to the Hawks, they look like incredible. Like
Yeah.
they don't just win games, they blow people out. I think all 12 of these, or not all 12, I think one or two of them have been by single digits of these 12 straight wins. I'm sure people are gonna say I'm jinxing them. Like I don't see them losing this series. I
Oh, the
just
Braziller
don't.
jinx.
I just don't see them losing this series. I think the
Yeah.
Spurs, like let's be real, if OKC was healthy, they would not have lost to the Spurs.
Yeah.
OKC was down two of their top three guards. The Spurs are going to be, to me, in a year or two, just be incredible, but they're still
Oh,
so
they're
young.
they're incredible now. I mean, God,
Right, but
it's
they're still so young.
yeah,
And to me,
that's scary.
OKC, right. OKC is better, but they were injured. They had two, like, obviously Jalen Williams being out was a killer, and then Mitchell gets hurt too. Like, yeah, I mean, I just think look, I can't. I still like, even though we're getting closer with every win, I still cannot imagine what a Knicks parade would be like.
They're gonna burn the city to the ground. Let's not jinx it. Let's not jinx it because my God, what it could be. But the Knicks stealing Game One on the road is just monumental. And
Yeah,
now Game Two, uh, I listen. I think the updated number for the cheapest ticket to Game Three at Madison Square Garden
it's
with
insane.
Donald Trump in attendance now, which I think has probably raised the ticket prices, is $8,000 as of like 11 o'clock
I mean,
on June 4th.
people are paying for it. It's incredible to think that
eight
people are,
thousand dollars to
and these
sit
are for
in the
like,
400s.
right. These are to basically barely be able to see.
Yeah, and that's just insane. And guess what? If they somehow win Game Two and are going to the Garden with a potential to win Game Three and Four and potentially sweep at the Garden, Game Four ticket prices might be $100,000 to sit in the four
It's
hundreds. It's gonna be something
I
stupid.
mean, personally, if I was a diehard Knicks fan and I wanted to experience it, I would just go to a bar. I get there real early, go to a bar, watch the game, and then just be out in Seventh Avenue with all the crazies. That's what I would do.
It's
It's not
it's
worth
wild.
it's not worth spending $20,000 to sit in section 412.
It's
But
crazy. It's
just my
crazy.
just
But
my opinion.
Knicks in the NBA Finals. Zach Brazil in the New York Post covering them, and definitely a fun experience, I am sure. Zach, enjoy Game Two. That's going to be on Friday night, and then we'll see you back in New York for Game Three of the NBA Finals at Madison Square Garden,
What a night that'll Trump game three, eight
8:30.
$8,000
Yep,
a ticket,
yep.
8:30. What a
Oh,
scene that's gonna be.
my goodness, it is absolutely amazing to be a sports fan in New York. Shout out to St. John's baseball that has the Super Regionals against Alabama this Saturday. That's another huge moment for the St. John's athletics program. Zach Brazil, the New York Post. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll do this again later on in the summer, and thank you as always.
My guy, have a good one.
Appreciate it, Johnny Nation. Thank you so much for listening. We'll catch you next time.